This is Love and the Modern Man, where we talk about the 21st century man, his heart, and what he can do to expand it. Here with your host from the Unlimited Horizon, Shaheen Gunay, and Matcher Date, Ariadna Pretz. We tackle different topics nearly every week with the same maxim, know thyself. It's by knowing who you are and what you need from yourself and others that you will be able to love to the fullest degree. Now here's the show. Hey guys, welcome back to Love and the Modern Man. It's Shaheen Gunay with the Unlimited Horizon, and today I am with a special guest, Dr. Joe Marshala from Repeatlessness.com. If you're not familiar with Dr. Joe's work, he is, what's the way you put it, Joe, about like the pick all, eat all guru type? You have a certain way of saying it.
Well, it's either a free-range yogi or holosopher. I'm not sure which one you're thinking.
So Joe, I found Joe haphazardly one day perusing YouTube, not perving YouTube, but perusing YouTube, and a lot of the information, a lot of the ideas he's had are culmination of many things that I've read, looked into, and it seems to me he's taken it one step further, and I wanted to get him on the show today to kind of dig into the idea of mindfulness and relationship and how those two correlate, and maybe, I don't know, we'll see where it goes, and we'll play with that. But I guess let me start off by saying welcome, Joe. Thank you for joining me. And
thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here.
My pleasure. I would love to pick your brain. I know that you have a special lady in your life now, and I know you have probably dated a few here and there in the past, and you have some maybe war stories, maybe not. But for a listener who would be kind of interested in looking at mindfulness and relationship, both with themselves and with somebody else, would you have a couple ideas to share, or could you expand on that topic a bit?
Oh, I'd love to. And how long do we have?
Well, if we need to, we'll make it a couple segments. It's okay.
No, well, it's a big topic, and it seems to be on everyone's mind. Most of us are looking to partner with someone. Most of us are looking to find that special someone who really we feel safe with, that we feel we can trust, that we feel we can be our true selves with, and that we are lovable and acceptable, and that we have a great need to feel that type of energy from another human being. And so it's a big subject because it seems like a lot of us are not doing well at that.
Yeah.
Or a lot of us are struggling with that greatly. I myself have for many years. I was married twice.
Wow.
And the first person I was married to, we made it 10 years and 3 kids. And we got married very young, in our 20s. And as a traditional way, I guess you'd say it, is we grew apart.
Okay.
And we maintained a friendship because we had these 3 children together. So we raised them together, and it was always very cordial that way. But we weren't going to lie to the children and be in an environment that was unhealthy, because we were unable to really support each other in the way that we both wanted to be supported.
Okay.
And so, when we looked at it 20 years later, we kind of joke and say, well, apparently the reason we were together is because the planetary gene pool required that we mix and make these little beings. But there seems to be no other reason for our coming together,
Yeah.
The second marriage was about 5 years. And so I'm a long-term kind of serial long-term relationship kind of guy. And once again, we both were in a desperate situation. We both were really wanting to be loved and accepted. We both were wanting that more than really paying attention to the flags that would come up.
Sure.
And there were certain things that would say, gee, oh boy, I'm not sure about this person. But we were so alone and we were so lonely that we really wanted to be, not alone. Except then we were not as compatible as we would like to be. So that came to a resolution as well. So I started looking into this. I started really looking into this idea of relationship and what is relationship. And so I went to the dictionary, and I thought, okay, I'll start there. What's the definition of relationship? And believe it or not, one of the definitions of the word relationship is two opposing forces attempting to find common ground. And quite frankly, that was the definition of all of my relationships.
Yeah.
Where it was, we were on different, we had different stands on different things. And so we were trying to find that common ground so that we could stay together. But it finally got to the point where there was less common ground than there was difference. And so that ultimately was where we, kind of went apart. So that led me to think more about really what it was I want. If I didn't want relationship, what did I truly want? And that led me to think more about like life, and how this we have this spiritual concept that we're all one. We hear that all the time. We're all one. I'm one with the trees. I'm just a biological entity. I'm a ambulatory water balloon, or a mammal living here in a biosphere. That's probably the truest sense of the animal nature of we are all living here as biological units inside this great big biosphere, and that we are a singularity. We are life. And there's different forms of life, just like you have a toe and you have a finger. And the toe and the finger are still both part of a singularity called you, although they're completely separate and individualized, just like we are. So we are just as individualized as a toe and a finger is in the singularity of oneness, as we are in the singularity of all life on the planet.
Sure.
And so we are just one form of that life. So that led me to think about this concept of union. That I no longer wanted to be in relationship with anything, because that would mean I was opposite of it and not part of it, but I wanted to seek the union that I was with everything. And so I even actually created a class eventually that I began to teach because I really wanted to learn this stuff. And they say the things you need to learn the most, you teach the best.
Wait, that finger pointing back 3 times? Oh, shoot.
Exactly. So I created a class called Relationship versus Union.
Okay.
And the idea around that class, and that probably will be available within the next year or so on Udemy. I have a series of classes on Udemy. We can talk about that later. But that's a class that I used to give live and would have couples or individuals come who wanted to learn about that. The basic tenet of that class, though, is the idea that it is literally impossible to receive or give love. It's impossible to receive love from another human being or actually give love to another human being. And so when people look at me and say, what are you talking about? How could that be? And I say, well, it comes down to this idea that there's, we talk about the 4 elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. Earth, water, air, wind, and fire. Yeah. And there's a 5th element. And I say that the 5th element is love. And that love is a constant, just like air and water and fire and the earth are constant. Love is a constant. It is always there. And love, I believe, can be synonymous with light or life force, but it is an energetic that is always present on the earth and never not present. And so when I am in a union with someone, or I am with a partner in someone, it is really important for me to understand that I am not dependent on them. In other words, I do not get my sense of love from them. What happens is, in their presence, I align myself with and allow out of myself that which is love. But they're not the cause of it. Now, that's really important to understand, because if I make them the cause of my love, several things happen. The first one is they become my love dealer. right?
Yeah.
Just like a drug dealer. And I'm going to want to own and possess that dealer and know that I get exclusive supply and all this other kind of stuff, right? And so that's one of the things that's really important. But the other thing that's really even more important than that is that if I believe I get my love from them and I don't source it from the universal place where love exists, if I believe I'm getting it from them, then I enter into what I call an if-then reality.
Sure. Yeah.
I enter into this equation that if they behave a certain way, then I can feel love. If they talk a certain way, then I can feel love. If they treat me, and so I give away all of my power to experience love to this other person who I have, or to anybody outside of me. That if anything outside of me is the cause of my feeling love, then I am completely dependent on the universe aligning up in a certain special way so that I can experience love. But if it doesn't, then I can be the perfect little victim. And like, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. Da, 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 da. Now, often we can get into victimization, really what all of that is, and the need for us to express it because we have unresolved issues from our childhood and all this other kind of stuff. But just to stick with the idea of relationship versus union, first, I don't source my love from my partner. Second, I am completely responsible for when I'm feeling love. So when I'm not feeling love, it's not my partner's fault. It's because I'm not aligned with and allowing out of myself the space that is love.
Mm.
Now, if you can get two people to agree on that,
Well,
to agree that's how we're going to operate. Yes,
Sure.
that's truth. That's the truth. We're going to operate. Then you have a complete open possibility because you're no longer in an environment whereby you're trying to make sure that this person is acting a certain way for you to feel centered and feel loved and feel full, you know?
Yeah.
And so fortunately, by giving up, the universe presented me with my current partner, Maria, who that is how we operate, and we operate fully in that space. And it is the most extraordinary thing. We have what I always knew could be true, yet was trying to make true in my other relationships by forcing people to act a certain way as opposed to just letting her be as she is.
That reminds me. I actually have a couple questions. First is, when you talk about pushing, I make a joke often that life's like a fart, don't push. So I'm glad that you could see the shit in it.
Yes.
The second one, I actually have an analogy, and maybe this might resonate, might not. So if we can look at our bodies or our minds or our totality, our being, if you will, as an instrument, and to say, for example, the chord that is loving is A sharp. It doesn't matter, whichever chord you choose. Where what you're saying is when you are aligned with love, and in other words, when you're with a person, it's not them plucking your chord, it's them already being loving for themselves and that resonating with the love you have for yourself. So in other words, both instruments resonating that frequency, if I'm understanding you correctly. It's not that they are the cause. Yeah?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent analogy. And we have the physics to prove what it is
Sure.
you just said.
Yeah.
That if you take two guitars and you have the guitars tuned correctly, both the all 440 or whatever is your relevant tuning, and you put those two guitars within 10 feet or so of each other, and you pluck the string on one guitar, that same string on the other guitar will begin to vibrate.
Yeah.
And you mute the guitars, you pluck one on the other, and the other one will begin to vibrate. So yes, that's true. And it's the principles of resonance that vibrations are looking for a place to reside. So that in the event that you are in a resonant field that is loving, the parts of yourself that are loving have an opportunity then to begin to resonate and express themselves. So that's very true. And so, I have a song, how could, one of the lines is, but if you can't love yourself, please, can you tell me, how do you think you can give your love to anyone else?
Yeah. Well,
and it's the same kind of idea.
It's true. It's funny because I've corrected people when they say it. It's, oh, I love you. Well, what you're actually saying is, I love you so much I could eat you. And I know that's a weird way of putting it, but it's like,
I know what you mean.
it's like,
Yeah.
I love ice cream. It's not like I like looking at it and just having it sitting next to me on the couch. I like it when it's in my mouth and going down my side, and I like the feeling I get from the rush of sugar or whatever. So it's that, hey, we resonate. I'm resonating with the ice cream. It's giving me the good feeling that's already it's just enhancing that's already there. Or like the chord again, we amplify each other. So if you're in disharmony, you can destroy each other. Like an A sharp and a, like, I don't know, F flat maybe.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because even when you talked about partnering with, one of the terms I often offer people is partnering up. In other words, can you amplify that love within? So to go back to that musical, if two instruments are playing the A sharp, then it's more of a profound chord. It's wow, we're so much more together than we are apart. Yet also to remember you're enough by yourself. And I guess that was the follow up question to this element, or to this conversation here, is you mentioned that the love and being in relationship, or rather being in union, is being in a resonating vibration, or being in the dance of love, if you will, with somebody else. Well, how can you resonate within yourself with love? If you had to summate, if you will, or kind of offer people a few ideas where they could potentially frame their actions, or see themselves as lovable, love worthy, or even practice love toward themselves. And for me, I've already kind of given the cat out of the bag here by saying I just frame it like, oh, I'm doing this because I love myself. But I don't know if you have anything that you would prescribe or
Yeah.
offer. Go ahead.
Back in the '80s, I read a really great book, and it was by Gay and Katie Hendricks. Gay and Katie Hendricks, and it was called The Art of Loving Yourself. And so it's this exact conversation that we're having. And it was a pretty new concept to me, the idea that I should love myself. And, could I love myself for not being able to love myself? Right?
Absolutely.
Well, it really became really important to really begin to contemplate that, because, we more often than not believe a lot of unnice things about ourselves. And based on our upbringing and what our parents or significant role models and brothers and sisters would say about us, and say you're a jerk and you're a liar and you're a cheater and you're this and all these different types of things. Well, those don't just bounce off when you're a little kid. They actually go in there and begin to frame your self-concept and the self-story that you have. Now, to get into this concept of love and of loving oneself, it's really important to make a distinction between two words. And those two words are the word guilt and the word shame. And the difference between those two is profound. Now, guilt, I submit, is a feeling. And guilt is our conscience. Guilt is our guide. We've done something that has caused someone discomfort or pain. We go to do something, and we learn that that's what happens when we do that action. Now we're going through life. We're going to do that action again, and that guilt feeling comes up that, ooh, wow, that actually hurt someone when I did that. And now if we actually follow that guilt, we then will stop those actions so that we don't repeat that pain with someone else. And so guilt is actually our conscience. It's our guide. It's a feeling. And guilt is good, in my opinion.
Okay.
Now, shame, on the other hand, is a belief. Shame is a belief that somehow you're wrong, you're bad, that God messed you up, that at the human factory you came in. This is, there's a lot of trouble with Christianity and some other religions, is that, you're a sinner, you come in here, you're bad, you're wrong. And I'm not going to go against those religions per se, but those types of thoughts can be really damaging on so many different levels when it comes to one's self-perception.
Sure. Now,
I often say that when I speak about guilt and shame, I have to bring in the concept of self-esteem. Okay, and self-esteem. Many people I'll ask during my lectures or presentations, and I'll say, well, what's self-esteem? People say feeling good about yourself, loving yourself, all these kind of things, and really those are kind of conceptually correct. Yet actually, according to Jack Canfield, who uses the former president of the National Task Force on Self-Esteem, Self-esteem has nothing to do with liking yourself or feeling good all the time. Self-esteem has everything to do with knowing who you are, knowing who you are and how you actually are. And the importance of understanding these distinctions, so we have guilt, shame, and then self-esteem, is that the self-esteem concept has to do with if you know who you are. If I were to come into a room, Shaheen, and I would tell you, you've got green hair. And you'd look at me like, no, I don't. I said, yes, you got green hair. And you're like, no, I don't. God, you've got green hair. And I'm just yelling at you. You clearly understand that I'm got a perceptual problem, right?
Sure.
But if I were to say, you're a selfish son of a gun,
you can curse. I do it often.
All right.
The show will permit
it. You're a selfish son of a bitch. Da, 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 da. Now, if you get hooked by any of those things that I characterize you, that you're selfish, you're mean, you're a jerk, you're insensitive, if you get hooked and feel upset about me saying any of those things, then clearly somewhere inside of you, you believe those to be true. Because otherwise they should just bounce off of you like I'm calling you, or you're saying that you have green hair.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
If any of those stay, so in that way, the shaming beliefs that we have about ourselves are the things that don't just bounce off of us like green hair would bounce off. If you don't have your hair is not green. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
Your hair is green. But you know what I mean? So I share these things with you because the idea of self-love is really learning about oneself and learning about the shaming voices that are being self-perpetuated through one's own self-talk in their mind and buried deep in their belief systems. And we only have a few moments here, so I'll just recommend a book. And it's called Healing the Shame That Binds You. Healing the Shame That Binds You. And I wish I could tell you the name of the author right now, but I don't have that name on. But Healing the Shame That Binds You. Come on, Joe, I know this author. I should look it up.
I got it. Go ahead. Keep going. I'll look.
Yeah. Healing the Shame That Binds You. And it is an incredible book that begins to help you to discover what are these shaming voices? What are the shaming beliefs specific to you?
Yeah.
And where you got them, who gave them to you, and then how to dismantle them and have no longer control your self-perception.
And that's John Bradshaw. That's
yes, John Bradshaw. Yeah. Thank you from The Family.
It's
right. Yeah.
It's interesting how you put it as far as like how people have come about with these beliefs, and it's funny. I think it was Nathaniel Branden, or it might have been Goldman. I can't remember. But one of them says, "Well, you're a belief thief." In other words, all the things you believe, you essentially stole from somebody else. They gave it to you, and then you took it. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, it wasn't true until you made it true for yourself. And now, in a funny way, we live in this continual myth where we just keep rewriting the same. Oh, I'm ugly. I'm fat. I'm this. I'm that. I'm balding. Whatever it is. And then it's funny in a weird way. There's a psychosomatic loop. I think you've read Louise Hay's Heal Your Body, and it manifests. It manifests in your body, and like, oh, I can't ever find a healthy partner. Well, first, are you even a healthy person? And then you're manifesting it by putting it out there. And it's funny because it's so simple. It's so simple, and it's just challenging to break that pattern. And if you don't have tools, you don't have people to rely on. It's actually, they're out there. It's just that most people don't go hunting for that. We live in this, from what I've come to realize, we live in almost an IKEA culture where you get it, you use it, you throw it away. And to some degree it's sad, because that's how we to some degree get to relationship. Like we meet people and we swipe on Tinder, and that's someone's daughter, that's somebody's son, that's a human being who has a story, and we move so fast in life, and I'm guilty of this as well. I can hear it in our speech pattern. You're like really mellow. I love talking with you.
I've actually taken a lot of deep breaths before we did this because I was all hyped up for this. And my last radio interview, I was so excited and so hyped up, I sounded like a manic, crazy dude. So I decided, okay, we're going to go the opposite direction this time.
Intentional grounding. Okay, that's fair. I
That's
can
right.
accept it.
Now, it's interesting, this idea that we steal ideas, because the learning to love oneself, we have to understand that for the first 18 months of our lives, we have no identity. We have no separation consciousness. There's no me, there's no I. And then a particular brain part turns on somewhere between 16 and 20 months. And that brain part is called the hippocampus. And when the hippocampus turns on at around a year and a half of age, then all of a sudden the I shows up. And I like broccoli, or I'm fussy when I go to bed, or I this, or I that. Everything that I says about itself, though, it downloaded or it received, it got from the significant role models in its life. So if your mother's saying, you're a fussy one, or she's always, or even if they're talking about you to someone else, well, she doesn't like broccoli, or, she's afraid of dogs. Whatever the parents say, I mean, you may have had one incident, and someone defines that incident as this is how you act in this situation. And then from that moment forward, they keep reinforcing. All of a sudden, the hippocampus turns on, and then that I starts saying that about itself. Even though it may have only been one incident, or maybe two or three, it's not the totality of your being. Yet now, all of a sudden, you have this definition of yourself that is based on what other people said about you. And so much of the work that I do and in my book and things of and all that nature is to get people back to what I call their pre-identity state, before that hippocampus turned on. And the purpose of that is so that you can be who it is you are here to be, as opposed to be doomed to who it is you were told you were.
Okay.
And in that telling you is where the shaming beliefs about oneself begin. And then we begin to borrow or steal other people's concepts and belief systems to support the shaming beliefs that that were given to us at an earlier age. So it's really important to understand that, one, everything that you believe about yourself might not be true, and two, that you, at any given moment, can change. None of us are stuck in stone. None of us are fixed. All of us are malleable, and all of us can change.
Absolutely.
And the first place that I begin to tell people to begin doing is a process that I call reparenting. And I was talking about this back in the 80s when I was teaching and lecturing at university, and then someone ran with it and wrote a book about it, which is just great. But the basic concept is that if you are holding a little tiny baby in your arms, and that baby was having trouble in life, would you start yelling at that baby, "Don't do that," and no, you'd be so gentle and so soft and so understanding and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened. Yeah, it hurts when that happens, but you'll get over it and we'll work together and I love you." And we actually need to begin a conversation with ourselves as being the parent we wished our parents were for us.
Okay.
So in other words, to reparent ourselves, to be that gentle, loving voice, and to literally talk to ourselves. I mean, I spent years literally communicating to myself, "Joe, I love you so much. And I know it's been really hard, and you've been in a lot of trouble, and you've done this, and you've done that, and you're going to get through this. And I know it's really difficult right now, but I love you."
Yeah.
And literally talk to myself as if I were my own parent.
Yeah.
And be as loving and gentle with myself as I wish my parents would have been with me. And that is the very beginning process of this reprogramming, and really beginning to learn oneself, to understand the difference between guilt and shame, to identify the shaming beliefs that you had about yourself, to realize that when you're reactive to words that someone might say to you about you, that you have a shaming belief that you have not revealed yet to yourself and removed. And that, too, you don't get love from anyone else, you source it from within. And so that you can free yourself to be an independent, purely loving, caring human being, dependent on nothing, to experience the peace and beauty and joy of life.
It almost seems by what you're saying. I mean, and it's interesting because I from what we've just summated here in the last 20 minutes, it almost seems to me like love is an inner game in the sense that you have to be responsible for creating the not resignation, excuse me, resonation of love within yourself. In other words, getting to the highest point where you know yourself and you love, the dark side, the light side, the whole thing, the whole package, the toe, the heart, the eyes, the hair falling out, the gray hair, the smells, whatever. And I guess
Try putting on a few pounds and then see how you do. I got a belly now, and I'm like, oh, I love myself. I love myself. Like, I'm sorry.
no,
Continue.
no, no. By all means, it's great because and Ariadna's not here today, my co-host. Yet one of the things she talks about are deal breakers in relationships, and she kind of goes forth as a matchmaker and looks at people and says, "Okay, well, what are your deal breakers?" And sometimes it's like, and she would know more, but like a man's not tall enough. They have kids. There's other stuff now. One of the funny concepts that I've always, I don't know, I've had an interesting time challenging her on this, and I don't want to speak too much for her. Yet it's interesting for me because I feel like if you have captured and mastered this concept of self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, and not necessarily mastered because it's always a continual growth. Yet if you've gotten beyond that, the deal breakers are like more like preferences. Well, I guess I could date somebody with kids. I'm not opposed to that. I would prefer not to because it adds an extra complication to the relationship, but I'm open to it. I could date a woman who's taller than me, and in lieu of picking her up, maybe I can climb her like a tree. I don't know, whatever. But, but it's to say that when you and I'm asking based off of your own growth and saying, do you feel that when you have that level of self-love that you can love anybody and you can still honor your preferences? It's just it moves away from it being a hard, steadfast no. I don't want that in my life. I don't want to be around that. It's a different energy from what I'm gathering from what you've offered here.
Yeah, what's really interesting is really understanding where you got your preferences.
Hmm.
Because for many of us, our preferences now have been programmed into us. Multiple generations of programming of advertising,
Sure.
of what's exciting, what's thrilling. So many men have not been breastfed and have been bottle fed, and so they miss that natural the natural
Wow. Yeah.
bonding that they have with the mother.
Yeah.
And so now it's women with big breasts, those big kind of voluptuous
Ah.
breasts that are filled with milk that they're desiring, and women want to
Wow.
be desired, so now they go and they get the breast implants because they want to be what the men want. And why do the men want it? Well, it's because they were denied it in childhood and all these different types of. So we really have to look at what these preferences are, because one could be really throwing away the most extraordinary experience in their life because of some past programming of what they were
Mm.
told they should like and want.
Well, so how does that a sliding scale? So if you were on the nipple till you were 5, do you still want big breasts? You haven't had enough.
Um, well, it's a proposition that I make into how we got into this whole idea of of enhancements,
Okay.
and unfortunately, the reason women subject themselves to all different types of surgeries, whether it's a brow lift or a neck tuck or a tummy tuck or liposuction or butt implants or breast implants or all these things, is because they think that the woman who's doing that thinks that they'll be more lovable and acceptable and desirable if they have those things.
Mm.
And not because they like them, it's because they want to be desired. They want to be wanted. And so men are and have been programmed to like these things. Our ideas have been shaped by the modeling industry, by television, by movies, by advertising, all of this types of stuff. And we've actually had our brains shaped to desire something, and that we have power and strength if I have a woman like that. Oh, yeah, I'm a man because I have a woman who looks like that. And I'm a woman because I have a man who's willing to spend money on me, and all this other kind of stuff. And it goes back and forth. And all of these are just really lousy identity kind of issues that are just driving people to be miserable. And they're so miserable that then they start getting into alcohol, and they start trying to numb the true feelings about their unhappiness. And we could break all of that down, and it's just really sad and really, really unfortunate. And I forget how I got into this, other than to say that, we have these preferences that you were mentioning. In the truest sense, the 13th Chinese patriarch, which is the highest teachings in Buddhism, and some of the highest teachings in Buddhism, and some Buddhists and some monks and excuse me, people who are aspiring to reach these highest teachings spend 20 or 30 years preparing, and then they get to begin to learn. But the very first lesson in the book of the 13th Chinese patriarch says, the great way, capital G, capital W, their emphasis, the great way is easy for those who have no preferences.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. That means for anything.
Yeah.
Right? Now, in truth, I mean, I can look at how my brain was shaped. I can look at, for growing up in the 60s and Playboy magazine, and then all of a sudden all the other magazines that came out, and my desires, my sexuality, my everything were shaped around what was being sold to me in the magazines, what was being sold to me on television, and all these natures. And you go to men's clubs, or not men's clubs, men's groups, where the men are being honest about where they got their feelings, and all of them can be traced back to pornography and advertising and all this other kind of stuff. And that in order for them to feel like they're a successful man, they're going to have a woman that looks like that. And some guys just give up because they realize they're never going to find that, and other people have found the truth that there's no happiness really in there. And then maybe there's the few really happy, gorgeous-looking people. I don't know. I haven't met them yet.
They say a smile is I don't know what they say, but a smile is like a man's pair of tits.
Yeah.
Unless you have moves, but that's. Go ahead.
I'd like to share, before we complete, though, I'd like to share one more book and idea that would be really helpful for your listeners.
Please.
When they find themselves in a union, there's a book called The 5 Love Languages. And the 5 love languages is based on the idea that each one of us, each human being, has a love tank, like a gas tank.
Mm-hmm.
And the love tank needs to be filled up. And there's 5 basic ways that each one of us gets our tank filled. And most of us have a preference for one of them, and then they're lower down in the scale. So one of the 5, and they're called the 5 love languages. And so one of the 5 love languages is physical touch. That when you are touched physically, that's when you feel love, and that's when your love tank gets filled.
Mm.
Another one is words of acknowledgement. So when someone's speaking very nicely about you and says nice things to you about who you are, that really fills your tank, and you just feel so much love when you hear those types of words. Then the next one is acts of service. And so if someone does something for you, and they pick up something from the store, or they help you with your car, or they clean, do whatever, fold the laundry with you. If someone does something for you, that's what makes you feel loved. The next one is quality time or intimacy. So that when you're having really quality time and just one-on-one, and you're being really open and honest, that's what fills your love tank. Mm. That's what makes you feel. And then the last one is gifts given. So when someone gives you a gift or gives you a present, you're feeling like, wow, that's so nice. They went out of their way and they found this thing for me, and that fills your love tank. So those are the 5 love languages: the physical touch, words of acknowledgement, acts of service, quality time, and then gifts given. and we have a hierarchy. Now, for myself, it's words of acknowledgement. That's definitely the first one, and the reason being is because when I was a child, I never really got acknowledged. I was the sixth child of six children, and everyone else's life was going on, and for me to get any attention or any acknowledgement whatsoever was almost impossible because I was just the last rung on this ladder that was being dragged around to everything. So whenever I would get a little morsel of some type of acknowledgement or some type of appreciation, oh my God, I just drink up and just
Mm,
so now I'm stuck with this idea that I need praise and acknowledgement to really feel loved. And then physical touch and intimacy are pretty close. And then acts of service, someone doing something for me that's really sweet and beautiful. And then gifts given, it's like, yeah, thanks. But, yeah, it doesn't give me a sense of love, if you will, the gifts
sure.
given. Now, each one of us have a different recipe and a different hierarchy. Now, there's a couple things to really learn about this dynamic that's occurring. And that is more often than not, we will give to our partner our love language. So my partner Maria, I mean, fortunately, we both have the same love language, so it works really well. But let's say her love language was gifts given. Okay,
Mm,
let's just say that. And what I'm doing though is because what fills me is words of acknowledgement. So I'm constantly acknowledging her and constantly, praising her and stuff like that. But that doesn't fill her tank. She needs me to give her a gift. That's what really fills her tank. But
mm,
that's not what I'm doing. I'm giving her my love language, and then she's giving me gifts all the time because she thinks that that's what gives her a feeling of love. So she's giving me her love language. So I'm giving her mine, and she's giving me hers. But neither one of us is getting our love language met.
sure. Yeah.
And this happens more often than not in relationships or unions that are occurring, where more often than not we're speaking different love languages with each other. So learning what your love language is and learning what your partner's love language is really important. Now, I wrote the author of the book and I said, well, something you didn't talk about, which I believe is really important, I believe it's really important for all of us to learn how to speak and receive each of the love languages
Yeah.
so that they're all the same,
Mm,
so that we're never having to be just one way, that we can learn to speak in all the languages so that if whatever anyone gives us, we feel it. And it really speaks to us. And we truly not just acknowledge it, oh, that was nice, but really feel the love. But because we've been trained not to. We've been trained from our circumstances, whether the only way your parents showed you love was giving you money or giving you gifts or buying you clothes. And that's then how you bond to what love is, as opposed to they never did it verbally. Well, wouldn't it be nice that if someone said to you verbally something beautiful, you felt as good as you do as someone bought you a new purse or a new, mug or whatever, new color TV. But point is, so the love languages. So I really recommend that people read that book. And it's called The Five Love Languages. And begin working with those concepts, because once you begin to be able to exchange um, um, the events that cause one to align themselves with the sense of love, then it begins to open and broaden your ability to have that experience in partnership.
mm. Yeah. A lot of what you're saying here is resonating on this side, and I'm smiling. I got nothing to add. I'm like, oh, this is great. Um, I do want to get you back on here for another round to offer a few more ideas because I had a few more questions, and I mean, even now I'm like, oh, the bottom line here is listening and becoming more sensitive, and not only to the other person. Like right now, you've told me your love language is words of affirmation, which I knew, but to say, hey, I really appreciate you coming. It's been great information. I look forward to having you again, and I want to plug the work you're doing on Udemy and your website, repeatlessness.com, and get people over there. Lots of videos, lots of information. If you would like to work with Joe one on one, I don't know if you're doing that still, but there are links and you can email and discuss that. Um, but Joe, I would
You
love.
have to do better than that. I don't feel love yet.
You don't feel love? Wait, no. Am I responsible for that? Usually I'm the one throwing the other person under the bus. This is a weird. There's a full-on train there. Okay. Well, look, guys, I will go ahead.
I still do work one-on-one with individuals, and they can go to my website, repeatlessness.com, or joemarshalla.com. And they can read all about all the different services that I have available, all the different classes. There's a lot of free materials. So if you just want to introduce yourself to my materials by listening to MP3 lectures and things of that nature, and written articles, and even hear the first chapter of my book for free, all of that's available at Joe Marshalla or repeatlessness.com. And come on down, guys. Check it out. I provide, over 20 million people have embraced the work that I provide, and it's for some reason I found a few notes that everyone feels comfortable singing, and a lot of people have found a lot of peace within inside themselves. I don't share that my way is the way, but I give you a whole host of tools for you to discover your way and empower yourself in this world, because each one of you who are listening here have a special gift. Each one of you are a piece of the puzzle in this grand scheme of life. And if we can all learn to be fully empowered and fully expressed, we then can help all the others in this world. And so I implore you, do everything you can to find your way and be of service and uplift and nurture all life on this planet. And I think you'll find that your life is more enjoyable, and everyone you know will be much happier and more at peace with their lives as well.
Wow. I love you, man. Thank you. Thank you for thank you for coming on.
Nothing else to say.
Well, I look forward to joining you again on the next part 2 here. And guys, thank you for joining both of us on another episode of Love and the Modern Man. Until next time. Bye, guys.
Hello. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Love and the Modern Man with us, Shaheen Gunay, and me, Ariadna Pratt. If you like our show, please subscribe and leave us a review and rating on iTunes. Until then, lots of love.